بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين. الصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين خاتم النبيين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. This is lesson Hassan.
21.
Say it again.
21.
This is lesson 21. Lesson 21. This class we will be going through the meaning of the abiyats, the meaning of the lines for the chapter of Babu Asma'ilin al-Fa'ilin wal-Maf'ulin. Is correct?
نعم يا باب أبنية أسماء الله.
Now, Babu Asma'ilin al-Fa'ilin wal-Maf'ulin is the chapter regarding the scales of the Ism al-Fa'il and the Ism al-Maf'ul. We're on line 51. The author, rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, what's that on line?
نعم says كوزن فاعل كوزن فاعل اسم فاعل جعل.
طيب. He says the Ism al-Fa'il made from a thulathi verb comes on a scale of fa'il as long as it is not a fa'ula verb. Okay. This is referring to, we spoke about it before, it's referring to the fa'ila muta'addi as well as the fa'ala verb. Ism al-fa'il and fa'ula muta'addi and fa'ala verb. Is that clear?
نعم فعل referring to the فعل متعدي verbs.
Let me say that again. It's referring to the fa'ala verb, both lazim and muta'addi, and the fa'ila muta'addi verb. Is that clear?
Okay, yeah. فاعل متعدي.
Okay. طيب. Number 52.
عفوا هي 51B. 51B, yeah, I didn't read that part.
Oh, subhanAllah.
Yeah.
1 second. Yeah. Second. طيب. تفضل.
So he says in line 51B من الثلاثي الذي ما وزنه فعلا.
Yeah, I just told you what the line was at for. There you go. Yeah.
No problem. Okay.
It said the ism al-fa'il, right? جُعِلَ من الثلاثي, that's made from the thulathi verb. الذي ما وزنه فعلا, that's not on the scale of fa'ula, comes like on the scale of fa'ilin. Okay.
Okay.
No.
The Imam says on line 2A and B, he says ومنه صيغة كسهل والظريف وقد
Nah. Stop.
يكون. نعم.
He says ومنه صيغة كسهل والظريف. He said, and from amongst it, okay, from amongst it, meaning the ism al-fa'il, that's formed from fa'ula, is formed like صيغة is formed like sahlin, on a scale like sahlin, okay? It's referring to the scale fa'alin. Well, dharif, as well as it's formed like dharif, meaning the scale fa'il. It's referring to the two qiyas scales of fa'ula. He says, وَقَدْ يَكُونُ أَفْعَلًا, and it could, occasionally, it could come on the scales of af'ala, or fa'alin, or like fa'al, or fa'ala, or like fa'al. Is that clear?
Yeah. And okay. He mentioned the two qiyases, then he said it could come on أفعل أو فاعل أو فعل.
Right. He said,
Okay.
ومنه أي يعني من أوزان أسماء الفاعل فعل, from amongst the scales of the اسم الفاعل for فعل verbs, صيغة is what's formed كسهل والظريف, is that's what's formed on the scales of like سهل and ظريف. Okay. وقد
Okay.
يكون أفعل, and it could occasionally could be like أفعل or فعالا or فعل.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna just read the lines of poetry so I know because I know where it stops at, okay?
نعم.
Line 53. He says, Wakel Furati, likewise it could come like Furat on the scales of like the scales of Furat, where Ifrin, like the example of Ifr, meaning fi'lin, wal Hasuri, as well as on the scale Hasurin, okay, Fa'ul, wa Ghumrin, like Ghumr, Aqidin, like Aqil, meaning scale Fa'ilun, become like Junubin, like Fu'ulin, wa Mushbihin Thamila, and what is similar to the scale of Thamilun, meaning on the scale of Fa'ilun.
Mm.
You got that?
Yeah, what was that last bit after you said on the scale? فاعل.
ومشبه ثملا.
Mm.
He says in resembling mushbihin in resembling thamila. The example of thamilun, meaning the scale of fa'ilun, like fatinun.
Mm.
This 52 and 53 is all referring to the scale, the ism al-fa'il scales for the fa'ula, qiyas and shad
Mm.
that we went through. The two qiyas scales of fa'ula, meaning fa'lun and fa'ilun, and then the 10 shad, all in that line of poetry, 52 and 53.
It's referring. Did you say it was referring to فاعل?
Yes, 52 and 53.
Mm. Okay, gotcha.
And, yep. Okay. Ready for next line, 54?
نعم. Yeah.
He says, on the 54, he says, وَصِيغَ مِنْ لَازِمٍ مُوَازِنٍ فَاعِلًا. He says, okay, he says, in the fa'ila, the ism al-fa'il of fa'ila lazim verbs, okay, is formed, بوزنه, is formed from its own scale. كشجن ومشبه عجلة. Like shajin and ajilun. So you got basically this talking about the qiyas for fa'ila lazim. Now we're speaking about the ism al-fa'il fa'ila lazim. We said that the ism al-fa'il fa'ila lazim, the
Mm.
qiyas was either fa'ilun, okay, like ajilun, or for example, shajin from shajia yashja, or who was shajin. Is this
Mm.
clear?
نعم.
Okay. Now the next line, 55, is continuing on with the qiyas scales of fa'ila, as well as now we start speaking about the shad scales of fa'ila, the ism al-fa'il of fa'ila. He says, وَالشَّأْزِ, and it could, and likewise on the scales of sha'zin, like sha'z, meaning fa'al,
Mm.
wal-ashnabi, and ashnabu, meaning af'alu, okay? Wal-jadlani, in jadlan. So that's completing the qiyas scales for the fa'ila lazim, okay? Then he says, ثم قد يأتي. Then, okay, it could possibly come, yeti, kefanin, like fanin, on the scales of fat, like fa'ilun, like fanin, وشبه واحد البخلاء. And similar, the singular, واحد البخلاء, the singular of the plural al-bukhala, which is bakhil. Talking about the shadh, or the ism al-fa'il, ففاعل lazim is either on the scale of fa'ilun, kefanin, okay, or fa'ilun, kebakhil.
نعم.
Is that clear?
نعم.
Now, now this next line, 56. 56 is going to tell us two things. It's going to tell us the reasoning, the reasoning behind the ism al-fa'il of lazim. I'm sorry, the fa'il al-lazim. It can come on the scale of fa'ilun and fa'il. Okay. As well, it's going to mention to us the shadh scales of the ism al-fa'il for the fa'ala verbs. The shadh scales for the ismul fa'il for fa'ala verbs. Is this clear?
نعم. Tell us the reasoning behind the فاعل اللازم as well as mentioning the shad scales of the فعل verbs.
Right. And the shad scales of the fa'ala verbs, okay, which he's going to mention, they have the same reasoning why the fa'ila lazim, ismul fa'il shad verbs will be, okay? Is that clear?
Mm.
He says, line 56, he says, حملا على غيره لنسبة. حملا على غيره لنسبة. He says, carrying it on other than it for a nisbah, for a relationship. Meaning it has a relationship, either a similar or opposite meaning, like we talked about before. Remember?
نعم.
So, حملا على غيره لنسبة. Meaning, these ismul fa'il scales, the shad ones for fa'ila lazim, they're common on the scale of fa'ilun, okay, and fa'ilun. They carry and associated with fa'ala or fa'ula verbs, okay, due to them having a nisbah, a similar opposite meaning. Fanin, okay, has a similar meaning to dhahibun, okay. ذهب, which is a fa'ala verb. Bakhil, okay, on the scale of fa'il. Bakhila has a similar meaning of, I'm sorry, opposite meaning of karimun, okay. Is that clear?
Mm. نعم.
Okay. Then he says, كخفيف طيب أشب في السوق من فعل. Then he just mentions the rest of the shad, ismul fa'il, scales for fa'ala. He says, like, okay, like, khafif, okay. We said that the first scale for the ismul fa'il for fa'ala that was shad was fa'ilun,
Mm.
khafif. Why? Because uh, it's compared or carried on its opposite of thaqula. Thaqula, which is a fa'ula verb, becomes like thaqil.
Mm.
Remember this talking about that?
نعم. Yeah.
Now, then he says tayyibin. This is referring to the scale of fa'ilun. Okay? Fa'ilun. Okay?
Mm. نعم.
Then he says ashyabin or ashyab. Fa'af'alu is carried, is compared with fa'ila verb, right? Because of yeah, similar meanings of flaw, right? We said if like person was eshnabu, he has sharp teeth, right? Eshyabu with a feta means that this guy is gray hair. That's a flaw. Okay, is that clear?
نعم.
Fi sohi min fa'ala. Okay, meaning they're formed from fa'ala verbs. Okay,
Mm.
so yeah, which line are we on? 57, right?
نعم.
Now this next line is something that we did not mention in the summary. Okay, this next line, line 57, something that we did not mention in the summary. Reason being why we didn't mention in the summary, kind of similar to some of those issues in the first chapter in which he mentioned, and we didn't mention the summary. It's like a far'i issue. It's like a side issue as branched off the rules. Okay, is this clear?
نعم.
He says, Allah have mercy on him. He says, وَفَاعِلٌ صَالِحٌ فِي كُلٍّ. He says, it's valid, صالح. He said the scale of fa'ilun, right, is valid في كل, in each of the thulati scales. في كل, يعني for all three thulati scales, but for a reason, only in a condition. We're going to explain this after too, okay? I'm just going to repeat it. He said it's valid for the ismul fa'il to come on the scale of fa'ilun for all three thulati scales in قصد الحدوث, if intending that the action wasn't something continuous. Al-huduth means for an action to not be something continuous. meaning that it doesn't happen all the time, nor is the person permanently described with this. This is what huduth means, okay? The action doesn't happen all the time, nor is the person permanently described with this, okay? The action may happen now or in the future, but it's not always this way, okay?
Mm.
Then he gives an example, nahwa. For example, he says, غدا ذا جاذل جذلا. He says, غدا ذا جاذل جذلا. ذا جاذل, this person, tomorrow, this person is going to be extremely happy tomorrow, okay? Or we can say, tomorrow this person is going to be extremely happy. ذا جاذل جذلا, okay?
Mm.
غدا ذا جاذل جذلا, okay? Tomorrow, this person is going to be extremely happy, okay? Now, the word جاذل is on a scale of فاعل. You agree?
نعم.
Okay. جاذل is on a scale of فاعل. In the thulati for it is actually جذلة, 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 which means يعني فرحة, to be happy. Okay. Now this is a فاعل لازم verb, a فاعل لازم verb, right? We said that the qiyas for فاعل لازم verbs is فاعل, or like أفعل or فعلان. You agree?
نعم. You said it's فعلان and
What are you referring to? Pardon me.
just the last two things you said, the قياس for the فاعل لازم.
Is فاعل like عاجل,
نعم.
or أفعل like أشنب, or فعلان كجذلان. You follow me?
نعم.
Now we said it's valid, it's permissible, it's correct to put the ism al-fa'il on a scale of fa'ilun for all three scales, okay? Meaning you could do it for a fa'ala verb, a fa'ula verb, or a fa'ila verb. It doesn't matter. But this is only when you intended that the action wasn't something continuous, okay? Meaning he wasn't always happy, okay? It's not a permanent description of this guy. In the example he gave, he said, غَدًا ذَا جَادِلٌ جَدَلًا. He said, tomorrow, this person, جَادِلٌ جَدَلًا, is going to be extremely happy. How do we know that this is not something continuous? Because he said, غَدًا, tomorrow. That's the hidden clue. Is that clear? For this issue, right, you may have to listen to the recording again. You may have some ishkal, some questions. Okay?
نعم معك.
طيب. Now, also, I want to add that this specific line, right, 57, this is a very important issue that was not mentioned in Ibn Malik's Alfiyah. It's a very important issue that was not mentioned in Ibn Malik's Alfiyah. Okay? And as a reminder, again, Ibn Malik, rahimahullah, he made the Laamiyyatul-Af'aal after his Alfiyah. Okay? He made Laamiyyatul-Af'aal after Laamiyya. Let me say it again. He made Laamiyyatul-Af'aal after his Alfiyah as a completion to the Lamiyya. I'm sorry, as a completion to the Alfiyah. Okay?
نعم.
So, for example, I'm going to give you an example for this line 57 again. Okay? He's saying that basically a fa'ula verb, like keruma. Keruma is a fa'ula verb. You understand? Did you
نعم.
agree?
نعم.
Okay. We said that the qiyas for a fa'ula verb was fa'lun or fa'ilun. You agree?
نعم.
Now, if I can say, however, for example, huwa karimun ghadan. Huwa karimun ghadan. Okay.
Mm.
Generous to my wife. How do I, that I'm pointing to and trying to show that he's not like this all the time. It's not a permanent characteristic that he could in. You know what I'm saying? Huwa
Mm.
karimun. You understand?
نعم.
Okay. Or we give you example of a fa'ila lazim verb. Okay. Like he gave. هو جاذل غدا. Okay. جاذل is a fa'ila lazim verb. Okay. We
Mm.
said that the qiyas is either what? Fa'ilun, af'alu, or fa'lanu. However, he said it's coming to scale of fa'ilun. However, this is to show that it's not all the time. It's not a continuous thing. Okay. Is that clear?
نعم معك.
Okay. Inshallah. Hope you understand that. Oh, yeah. So again, that line 57 was not in our summary, nor was it in Ibn Malik's Alfiyah. Okay. So this is a beautiful issue that only Laamiyyatul-Af'aal comes with. Came in Laamiyyatul-Af'aal. Clear?
نعم.
Oh, yeah. The next line, 58, along with 59, is going to speak about how do we form the ism al-fa'il of ghayru thulathi verbs, okay, as well as the ism al-maf'ul for the ghayru thulathi. Is that clear?
You said it forms the اسم الفاعل في غير الثلاثي as well as the اسم المفعول.
The ghayru thulathi, as well as the, okay, you got that?
نعم.
Okay, so he says in line 58, he says وباسم فاعل غير ذي الثلاثة. He says جئ وزن المضارع لكن أولا جعل ميم تضم. Put a comma after that. I'm gonna read that line again. وباسم فاعل غير ذي الثلاثة جئ وزن المضارع لكن أولا جعل ميم تضم. You got me so far?
Yeah, تضم.
Right, ميم تضم. He says, okay? He says the اسم الفاعل of غير ثلاثي verbs, غير ذي الثلاثة, okay? meaning غير ثلاثي verbs, okay, will be formed, are brought, we say jit, are brought on the scale of its mudari, of the mudari, okay? لكن, however, أولا جعل ميم تضم. However, its first letter is made a meme with a dum. Is that clear?
نعم.
However, its first letter is made a meme with a dum, meaning it's substituted. The harf al-mudari, the letter mudari, is substituted with a meme with a dum on it. Is that clear?
نعم.
Now, then he says, line 59, completing that line, okay? Watch the comma. It's going to be another comma here. وإن ميم تضم وإن ما قبل آخره فتحت صار اسم مفعول. Comma there, okay? وإن ما قبل آخره فتحت صار اسم مفعول. Okay?
نعم. مفعول comma, yeah.
Nah. Comma
Yeah.
after مفعول. He says in if ما قبل آخره, in if that which is before the last letter, meaning the second to last letter, and if the second last letter is made of fatha, fatahta, okay, you gave it a fatha, sara, it became isma maf'ul. It became isma maf'ul. So he says if the second last letter is, you gave it a fatha, then it becomes isma maf'ul. It became isma maf'ul.
Okay. SubhanAllah.
You got me?
Now, if you gave the second to last letter fatha and you kept everything else the same, i.e. the meme in the beginning and tanween at the end, it becomes a ism maf'ul.
Yeah, it became a isma maf'ul. Now, in this line of poetry, he didn't mention anything about the tanween. Okay?
Ah, okay.
He didn't mention anything about the tanween, but it's mentioned in the shuru. Obviously, ism. Okay, ism has to have a tanween or a. Clear?
Now,
Okay. Now, the end of this line, he says, completing on 59. Okay. He says, وقد حصل من ذي الثلاثة بالمفعول متزنا. That's like a point right there. He said, وقد حصل من ذي الثلاثة بالمفعول متزنا. You following me?
نعم.
He says, وقد حصل من ذي الثلاثة. He says, in the ism al-maf'ul from a thulathi verb, min ذي الثلاثة, right? حصل, it happens to be متزنا on the scale of بالمفعول, on the scale of al-maf'ul. So he says, basically, the ism al-maf'ul of thulathi verbs happens to be on the scale of maf'ul.
نعم.
Got me?
نعم. طيب
Now,
معك.
nah, طيب. Now the last half of line 60, okay, as well as the end of 61 is just dealing with the shad scales of the ism maf'ul thulath. Okay. He says, وَمَا أَتَاكَ فَعِيلٍ فَهْوَ قَدْ عُدِلَ بِهِ عَنِ الْأَصْلِ كَامًا وَمَا أَتَاكَ فَعِيلٍ فَهْوَ قَدْ عُدِلَ بِهِ عَنِ الْأَصْلِ وَمَا أَتَاكَ فَعِيلٍ فَهْوَ قَدْ عُدِلَ بِهِ عَنِ الْأَصْلِ. He says, and whatever, وَمَا أَتَى, and whatever has come, كَفَعِيلٍ, like on a scale of fa'il, فَهْوَ قَدْ عُدِلَ بِهِ عَنِ الْأَصْلِ, then it has deviated, عُدِلَ, then it is deviated عن الأصل, from its original scale, meaning it's deviated from the original scale of maf'ul. This is referring to the shad of the ism al-maf'ul that comes like qatil, okay, dhabih. Remember that?
نعم.
Okay. You got me so far?
نعم معك.
Okay. So then he says on the last line, 61, he says, واستغنوا بنحو نجا والنسي عن وزن مفعول كامل. Okay. واستغنوا بنحو نجا والنسي عن وزن مفعول واستغنوا بنحو نجا والنسي عن وزن مفعول. He says, واستغنوا, and they were able to do without. Okay, استغنوا is to like be free of need. Okay,
نعم.
واستغنى الله. Okay, the Arabs meaning they meaning the Arabs. Okay, they were able to do without the scale of maf'ul. Okay, بنحو نجا والنسي عن وزن مفعول. The Arabs were able to do without the scale of maf'ul using the two scales of fa'alin like najah. Okay, najah is really, it's on the scale of fa'alin like najah. Okay, this is referring to one of those shad scales. Okay, fa'alun. Okay,
نعم.
is that clear?
Yeah, you said it's a Mashal scale of fa'alin, did you say?
Yeah, fa'alin or
Okay.
fa'alun. Okay,
No.
one nisi, as well as on a scale of fi'lin like nisyin. Okay, this is also one of those shaft scales that we mentioned in the summary. Okay, got me?
نعم. والنسيان is that فعل.
Yes, fi'lin.
Okay.
Okay, and this comes in Surah to Maryam. وَكُنْتُ نِسْيًا نِسِيًّا. Okay,
نعم.
okay. فأجاءها المخاض إلى جذع النخلة قالت يا ليتني مت قبل هذا وكنت نسيا منسيا. Okay, she thought she wished that she was nisyan, يعني منسيا. She wished that she was something forgotten.
سبحان الله.
Nisyan, a بمعنى منسي, meaning
مم.
to be forgotten. Okay,
نعم. نعم.
now
جزاك الله خير.
I mean, then he just ends the line and says, وَمَا عَمِلَ وَمَا عَمِلَ. He says, and they don't act as a fi'l. Okay? Meaning, in these two scales, cannot be used to act as a fi'l. مَا عَمِلَ. They can't be used to act as a fi'l. Meaning the scale of fa'alun as well as fi'lun. Okay? We mentioned this in a summary as well. Remember, you can say, for example, مفهوم المسألة, right?
مم.
But you can't say, for example, nisyan al-mas'alatu. Okay,
مم.
the issue was forgotten. You can't say that. Mafhum?
نعم.
All right. Alhamdulillah. Okay.
And there was a third one, عفوا أخي, but
Aywa.
obviously they didn't mention it.
Right. He did not mention the third, the last of the shad ismul maf'ul thulathi, and that was fu'latun. Okay, like uklatun, mudghatun, right? Mudghatun, a madghul, uh, uh, مغدود, okay, or أكلة مأكول, okay, لقمة ملقوم, okay.
نعم.
Now,
Which is
so that,
also not وما عمل. It's also not acted upon.
right, it's not acted. It can't be used to act as a fi'l. It can't be coming in. It can't be used to act as a fi'l. Meaning, it can be. You can't mention the fa'il after that, and that fa'il is the fa'il of that fi'l. Like I gave the example from before. مفهوم المسألة بمعنى فهم المسألة. Now,
نعم.
I can say نسي المسألة. The issue was forgot, but I can't say نسيون المسألة. Is that clear?
نعم.
Nah. And that's that chapter, alhamdulillah. It's line 61. Alhamdulillah. That's the end of the chapter of the scales of the ism al-fa'il and ism al-maf'ul, as well as he didn't mention it, but the sifatul mushabbah. We highlighted and noted that when we was going through the summary. Now, alhamdulillah, this is right here. The next chapter is Babu Abaniyat al-Masadi. This is going to be fun. Because the rest of this chapter, really, I'm sorry, the rest of the poem, we really almost done, man. This is like really the, I would say, the real halfway point. And this is the point in the poem in which it's all really hifd. It's really hifd, especially this next chapter, because he's just running down scales of the Thulathi Masadi. Okay. But also he mentions the qiyas rules, but he mentions the qiyas rules for the Thulathi Masadir later on in the chapter. So he just runs down a bunch of scales, okay? Think about 48 scales, Thulathi Masadir. And then he goes in, tells us the qiyas. We're going to mention this in the next class, though. But at this point, the next chapter that we about to get doing, next class, this is when we studied it with my teacher. This was when we actually stopped. Took a break during the explanation of this next chapter, and we went to study a book called Tasrif al-Izzi, as well as we read the introduction of the dictionary I mentioned last class was Mukhtar Sihah, due to the importance of knowing the Masadir, okay? So we'll mention this next class as well. But the next class, inshallah, we're going to go through the summary of this next chapter, Thulathi Masadir. And just to mention it again, this next chapter, he just runs through a bunch of scales. The way that we're going to summarize this chapter is we're going to basically define masdar. What's the masdar? We're going to mention the number of Thulathi Masadir scales. We're going to mention its different types. And then we're just going to mention the qiyasi scales. We're not mentioning none of the Sama'i scales. Why? Because I mentioned last class, the Sama'i is memorized. You just got to memorize that. Okay? You just got to memorize it. It's no ongoing rule. Okay? You just got to know how to Arab said that. Is that clear?
نعم.
طيب. Let's end right now. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.